and it's really a pleasure hearing Dr. Mikhail. And we were discussing 2 days back in Delhi why was this project so important for us. Like for the last 6 months, a whole team of data leads in RSF, we really worked quite hard actually. And the reason for that was very simple. Like the information is the key, and the people behind that information are more important sometime in terms of understanding the nature of information they're providing to the people. And if we don't know the people who are behind that information and why they are providing it at a certain space, at a certain level, at a certain crowd, we will not be able to make a decision whether this information is factual, right, or wrong. And the power of information overflow is so much that it influences us unconsciously. It influences our ideas, it influences our thinking, it influences our voting as well. And it's also true in a country like India, which is so diverse and big. People do not have same access to information. What we have in Bangalore, maybe that is not the level of information people in other parts of Karnataka will have, or in other parts of country have, and that makes a huge difference. And you will see during when the team will present the findings, how a single radio station in this country has a monopoly to have news as a broadcast. No FM station, no radio station in this country can legally produce news. State, one party or one politician can use it, but not everyone. And that makes huge difference because it is such a huge platform, almost reaching 90+% of population. Like people at home, people at office, people traveling. As a tradition, we used to all hooked up to the All India radio. And it was really a great, not of course we knew about it, but the structure behind it. And Nisha Bambani, was so pleasure to have you a part of this project. And then what it really means legally was a huge learning. So in the last 6 months, what we did was that we went through thousands of papers, thousands of data sets. Almost all of it was, to our surprise, no matter how much we complain in India, was available. A lot of people often say, hey, there's no data available in India, we don't know what's happening. But luckily, at least for this research, we found the official data about companies, about owners, how much they own, how much they have, how much losses they're making. It was all available with the Corporate Affairs Ministry. And the records of, you can say, advertisement to some level, for at least for newspapers, at least for those who are getting money from the central government. Because in India, the state is the biggest advertiser. And that advertising money is also a great tool to control and a little bit arm twist when there's a need of that. So the governments use DAVP ads at the national level and the state ministry, information ministries at the state level use advertisements as a very useful tool to control media. And whatever research actually found out, and that was the bottom line of it, was the transparency is the key. It is fundamental. And if we have to really reach out and build relationship with the audiences, the transparency is the key. I don't think even today or next 5 or 6 years, there's going to be already a fundamental shift what audiences are asking. Like we have seen examples in Malaysia in terms of Malaysia Kini, in Korea, News Tapa, in Philippines, Rappler. They've been extremely transparent with their audiences, with their readers. How we collect this story, who collected it, what was the source of information, who is giving money to us, and who are our advertisers, and what is our ownership. They put it in public. I remember Wired, for example, quite recently when they started the foundation and the platform later, they were very open and transparent about who is funding them. And that actually helped the platform. I think that was good for Wire. And that is good for a lot of other organizations as well. Because when you build trust, people really say, okay, let's be part of your momentum. And we also saw the numbers really don't tell the story. See, when we go abroad and we really proudly say, I at least proudly say that, we are such a rich country and we have such a diverse media. We have 1 lakh plus newspapers. And I remember once in, I think, Brussels or somewhere, when they heard about 1 lakh or 100,000 newspapers, well, it was like huge. And TV stations, radio stations. We have 36,000 magazines in this country. And we feel, wow, that is huge diversity. Well, that is really huge. But the key point of this research was also numbers really don't tell you the story. 4 companies in Hindi, 4 media companies in Hindi circle enjoy 70% reach of market. 4 companies. And that is almost similar for television. That is worse for regional media, which my colleagues will come and share with you in Tamil Nadu, for example. 1 channel plus 2 channel capture the whole market. So what they produce, at what level they produce that, has a huge consequences for the public policy, has a huge consequences for democracy. And as a consumers of news, we don't really feel it. We feel like, oh wow, we have a diversity, but that is not there. Because there's also this illusion of choice, that you feel like you have a remote in your hand and you have an option to watch 40 channels, 30 channels, 20 channels, or maybe now 100 channels, and you feel like, no, if I don't like this channel, I will watch other channel. But when you look at eventually what all these channels produce you is actually a single story. They do not cover issues except 1 or 2 or 3, and they make sure the audiences watch that story again and again, again and again, every day, every morning, every afternoon, every evening. How on earth, in a country like India, where we have such a diverse population, and we have millions of reasons and millions of stories in this country, why is it that we only discuss 4 stories, 5 stories on TV, and we know what are those stories actually? What are the dangers of that? I see that the huge consequences of that. When you watch one thing again and again, it influences you. Like a road show. A TV channel will run a road show for 5 hours. You change the channel, the same road show will be on another channel. You change the channel, it will be on another channel. And what happens because of that? The real stories disappear. As I said a day before, yesterday in Delhi, 500,000 people in this country disappear, commit suicide every year. And it's not a story. Karnataka, which is advanced, more prosperous, better governed than, I think, still than a lot of other states in the country, 35% plus medical equipment in government hospitals in Karnataka is dysfunctional. 35% medical equipment, CT machines, X-ray machines are not working in this state, and we don't see that coverage anywhere, because maybe it doesn't interest people who run the media. And the dangers are actually quite big, actually, beyond the stories. Because when you run a single story again and again, you rob people of identity. You stereotype. You feel like one person will always behave like this or behave like that. And you build a narrative. You build the consequences about that. And We're also saying, because we work quite closely with partners on fact checking and verification in the last 1 year, and I'm happy to see many of our colleagues here from the Google News Initiative training. For the last 1 year, we have been engaged with a massive process of training editors and journalists in this country on fact checking. So we have trained almost 9,000 plus editors and journalists on fact checking. And we're training 8,000 more. And all, I think, hundreds of workshops which we did across the country, we also learned one thing. Why is fake news spreading? Who are the people behind that and why that is happening? And I think one of the reasons was because the mainstream media somewhere down the line was not covering the stories. And when they leave those spaces open, other forces occupy those spaces. And I don't think any civil society or any society or a democracy can function when there's a one single thought or one single opinion. And that is, I think that's what we are covering in this research, that how editorially also, it puts a big question mark on editorials as well. Like if 4 newspapers capture 70% of market and they have a one type of thinking when it comes to editorials, that's also quite dangerous for a society. And then for the both traditional and what we call new media, the challenge actually is that somehow we want to follow what the people say and what they like. If there are more Facebook likes to any video or any story, we think, oh, that is the great story to tell, no matter how frivolous that story is actually, because we go by click bites, we go by TRPs, which is again market forces which govern the media, not other way around actually. I personally, I think people still believe that the journalism is quite a huge responsible profession, and editors at the end of the day have a really big call to make. I remember attending a New York Times editorial meeting, and it's a very popular meeting, and I conclude with that. It's a very quite popular meeting at New York Times. Every day at 4 o'clock, they have an editors meet, in which almost 20 to 25 editors come together, including the owner of the New York Times, almost every day, and they decide what is going to be on the cover of New York Times tomorrow. And I attended the meeting twice, and I saw editors who have been there for more than 25 years doing the mirrored practice before coming to the meeting, because they think it's a responsible job. And while we also understand that as a media, we see our role as reporters, editors, to some level, watchdog on authorities, on government, on state, and we love to ask questions by very nature, that is our job, but I think it is fundamentally important that we also be answerable to our audiences. Who owns us? Who controls us? How we decide stories? What stories do we cover? And why we are leaving some stories? We need to be transparent about it. And there's a huge global movement about it. I'm sure you're all aware about that, how things are working in terms of a huge push on membership models, of different models of journalism. I think that's really important. In future of journalism, we have a lot of challenges. I think one of the biggest challenges will be for us is being transparent. Who owns us? There's nothing wrong owning a successful, independent, powerful media company. But it's very important that we disclose that I'm the owner, I hold this much of share. Or in this country, it's not illegal for a politician to own media. It's completely genuine. But he needs to say that I own this company. He doesn't need to have a shadow figures around. And we don't know who controls it. And we uncovered some of these people actually in this research. And I think that's really a treat for us as part of this team to understand how that works. And with these words, actually, I don't want to take too much time because the key part of our whole thing is actually the website which we are launching. And I request my colleague to take the conversation forward. And thank you so much for listening. Pleasure really to be in Karnataka. I really love Bangalore for a lot of different reasons.